What's up, guys? Jim from Wrestle Wellbeing here, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Unseen Battles. I've got a very special guest joining me today. But before we get into my guest, I'm going to talk about the Hot Tag Foundation. For those of you that have been here before, obviously you will know about the Hot Tag Foundation. If you're new around here, make sure that you hit that subscribe. And first of all, like this video, share it with your friends as well. And also check out some of the other Unseen Battles episodes as well. So, guys, the Hot Tag Foundation is a non-profit organisation based here in the UK that aims to share wrestling with children across Britain, particularly those in need. The way that they do this is by collecting donations such as wrestling items like toys, merchandise, and other wrestling-related goods. They personalise and package the donations, prepare the donated items for distribution, and of course distributing them to the young children and young people. This often happens around the Christmas period and other seasonal holidays, sometimes in partnership with hospitals and other charities. In particular, this weekend on Saturday, where at Kingdom Wrestling, alongside the Hot Tag Foundation, is the Tour Rumble 2. So myself and Liam from Magic Wrestling are going to be there doing a live stream as well. Make sure you go check that stream out when it comes to it. But guys, in essence, the Hot Tag Foundation leverages the appeal of professional wrestling to bring joy and a sense of real-life superheroes to children, especially those facing challenging circumstances. Got a quick 2-minute clip, guys, and then we're going to get into this episode. So yeah, we'll see you in 2 minutes. Ready for there we have it, guys. That is the Hot Tag Foundation, along with all the fantastic UK wrestling companies up and down the UK, with some QR codes for you to go check those guys out. Now, on to today's episode of the Unseen Battles. Ladies and gentlemen, I am joined by the Sin with a grin. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Wrestle Wellbeing podcast, Dom Storm. Dom, thank you so much for joining me, man.
No worries, pleasure to be here.
So, Dom, for the people that don't know at home, you actually messaged me after watching one of the latest podcasts with Big Deal Dante. What kind of inspired you to get in touch, bud?
So I've been sort of following pretty much since Dante's interview. I've been like seeing what you've been doing, and obviously because you do like the whole mental health side of wrestling, it's just like I've always been sort of an advocate for like people talking about and helping their mental health. So the fact that it combines basically my two loves of health and mental health and pro wrestling, it's just I pretty much had no choice but to reach out. It's just such a like fantastic thing you're doing.
Appreciate that, man. Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on, but I really do appreciate you reaching out. So, can you tell us, mate, what initially drew you to professional wrestling? Is it something that you've wanted to do ever since you were a kid, or is it something that you've sort of discovered later on?
Pretty much since like childhood, yeah. I think the first show I remember like ever seeing was WrestleMania 25 back when I was on back when it was box office, not Netflix. And ever since then, pretty much I've been like, involved like in love with wrestling. And then when I found out I had a there was a local training academy open up where I live, I just it felt like the right sort of path in life to do.
Absolutely, man. So, who would you say were the first wrestlers that you saw that kind of drew you in?
Uh, Probably Shawn Michaels, definitely. And um, Kofi Kingston as well. Like just sort of like the more like sort of high flying versions of wrestling I sort of really adored as a kid.
Absolutely. So, can you tell us about your first ever training experience? What was it like when you first stepped into the ring and took that first bump?
Nerve-wracking, definitely. Because it was like sort of the first like sort of performance thing I'd ever done. Yeah, definitely nerve-wracking. More of the case of as like it wasn't necessarily like the physical side of it that I was dreading because like obviously like I trained for the physical side, but there was like nothing you can train for the like the mental side of it. Like I remember because my first ever thing in a ring was I was in a rumble match and I remember sitting backstage absolutely bricking it and one of the got one of the veterans we had the judge he came up to me and just said that like I'm gonna like no matter how long I could do 5 matches I could do fit like 500 matches that it's always you're gonna always have performance anxiety around it. Um, but that helped me realize is like, yes, I'm anxious, but it's a good thing because then it proves that I want to put on a good show for the people who've spent their money on it.
Absolutely. So, we obviously mentioned we spoke just before we came on the podcast. You mentioned that you've been wrestling for just over a year and a half.
Yeah.
Um, do you think that you've sort of like started getting used to the nerves, or do you think that they're still there quite prominently before you're going out?
Um, Sort of a bit of both, really. It does get a little bit easier the more I do, definitely, but I still like I could do like a 5 minute match, I could do a 15-minute match. I will still always have those nerves about it. So I'm always sort of worried like if I'm gonna do anything wrong, like, how do I sort of stop myself from doing anything wrong and make sure it looks good?
Absolutely. So, what would you say have been some of the most memorable moments or matches in your career so far?
Um, Definitely my debut in the Royal Rumble because, first time being out, doing the wrestling. And then I probably another one was I done a show for Bob Barrett um summer of last year, and that was I was in another Rumble, but I done a bit with Mad Dog Max in that, and just like how much he's done in his career, like he's traveled all over the world, he's done Japan, Europe, America, and just being able to do just a small segment with someone of that caliber is something I'll always remember.
Of course. So, how did you prepare for your debut, both mentally and physically?
Um, I just sort of, I just sort of like went about. It's very hard. I've got to remember that. So like yeah, when it came to so I had a few like training sessions leading up to it. I was nervous, and same as like when I got to the venue, I was nervous because, like I said, first ever performance thing, didn't want to do anything like cock-handed. Um, in terms of the physical side of it, I just sort of I didn't really do too much because I didn't know if that was something I wanted to do like sort of more long term. If I just done that rumble spot and that was it, I didn't want to do too much physical side of it. Just in case like I'd done the spot and I'm like nah, not for me. And then mental side of it, I just had to like keep replaying what I planned just over and over again because the more I done that, the sort of easier it got for me because then I knew what like just I one of my mates who I wrestle with, bless him, every time I do a match, I just go up to him and just talk to him what I'm doing, and he just sits there and listens. So being able to have something like that helps because then I'm not just there like think about it in my head over and over again. Actually getting it out there helps a lot.
Absolutely, bud. So, have you found that you're able to speak to anyone else in the locker room besides your friend? Have you found that any of the veterans that will offer you some words of wisdom while you're getting ready for a big match?
Definitely. Yeah, we usually have like quite a few veterans on Ash who've been doing this like 10, 15 plus years. So being able to have, you know, people with a load of experience helps because then like, if I'm worried about, you know, is the match flowing right or, is there something else I can do? Being able to talk to someone, like I said, the judge has helped me a lot and so has Mad Dog Max. Having those
Mhm.
two on our shows helps because then they know both like the physical side of it and like how it plans, but then they also understand the mental side of it. It's like sort of like what you can do, sort of calm the nerves a bit.
Absolutely, mate. So, what would you say have been some of the biggest challenges that you've faced in your career so far, aside from mental health? Have you had any nagging injuries? Have you had any controversies?
Luckily, I haven't had any controversies. Touch wood, I don't get any. Um, but so I suffer with something called hypermobility. So basically, all my joints can move. Some of my joints can move weirdly, and that does affect my wrestling a bit because doing like all the bumps and all the moving around during the match, I'm fine. Like, you have the adrenaline high, but afterwards, I can like, especially like my knees, I struggle to walk the day after or so because it's just my joints aren't used to doing that so much.
Absolutely. So, how would you say that your wrestling style and your persona has evolved since you first started?
Oh, it's gone tenfold basically because when I first started, I was obviously like, with the nerves and being first time doing something. I was really crap at the like character side of all of it. I didn't know who I wanted to be, what the vision of me as a wrestler compared to real life was. So I was sort of basically a mute character when I first started. We had someone else. I basically had a sort of tag team where I was the wrestler and the other bloke was the voice. But since but having to like being able to learn how to cut promos, write promos, and do all that, it's definitely means like I can do a lot more and I don't have to rely on people now. So that tag team has gone away now because I've basically gone to a point where I'm comfortable doing what he was there to support me for.
Mhm.
And like in terms of like wrestling styles, that's definitely changed because I've been able to learn a lot more, not just from the training I do, but from all the advice I've gotten off like all the veterans we've had and all the other wrestlers we've had from other promotions come in, having different ideas, different minds coming in means I've been able to evolve my wrestling style from something that was fairly basic into something I'm a lot more comfortable with, and it's sort of a bit more my own.
Mhm. Absolutely, my friend. So, what would you say the best piece of advice your coach has ever given you is?
Um, so my coach, so this I've still got the letter from it. We done a show, our first show this year. It was a very like we went all out for it, and he
Mhm.
wrote us all like little like sort of letters. And what he said on mine was, um, "Let the ring consume me," which really helped me because having that like sort of in the back of my mind was like, then I sort of realized like when I'm out there, when I'm putting on matches, having the ring consume me gets rid of like all the sort of anxiety I've had before it, because if I just let basically me and the ring become one, it's a lot easier to put on the show and I'm not worrying so much.
Mhm. Definitely, bud. So, got a couple of quick fire questions for you, bud, if that's okay.
Hmm. Yeah, that's all good.
What would you say is your favorite finishing move of all time?
Okay,
Favorite entrance music?
Edge.
What is a move that you've always wanted to do but you haven't yet?
Uh, Probably a moonsault.
Who is your favorite opponent that you've ever worked with?
Chris Royals.
Which do you think's better, WrestleMania or the Royal Rumble?
Probably the Rumble, just because it's more action packed.
More returns, isn't there?
Yeah, you get more chance of like, oh my god, who's returning? You get you get more pops out of Rumble than you do out of Mania.
Definitely, bud. If you could have a match with any wrestler, past, present, alive, or dead, who would it be?
Probably Shawn Michaels, because he's like a childhood hero of mine, and just his like his ring etiquette, his mind. I just sort of want to pick apart and like use it all.
Okay. What's your favorite cheat meal?
All a good rack of ribs, definitely.
I'd agree with that one.
Mm.
uh, if you could have any non-wrestling superpower, what would it be?
Teleportation. I'm lazy.
Who's the funniest person in the locker room?
Cyborg, definitely. He's as soon as you get a few drinks in him, he talks for it. No, no, it's just bloody hilarious.
Fantastic. And last quick fire question, Bud, before we get into the mental health questions. What is one film you could watch over and over again?
Shaun of the Dead, like probably the best zombie comedy film out there.
Fair enough, my friend. So, buddy, we're going to get into the mental health side of questions now. Obviously, for anyone that is watching that is struggling with their mental health, make sure you check out the description below because we've got a couple of links down there. Also, excuse me, for any guys watching this episode in particular, I've put a link to a charity that I'm particularly fond of and I have a deep personal relationship with, and that is Andy's Man Club. Uh, been associated with Andy's Man Club for a couple of years because I tried to attempt to take my own life a couple of years back, and I found Andy's Man Club really helpful because it's basically just like this, just just a couple of guys sat in a room talking to each other. They meet every Monday night except on bank holidays from 7 p.m. till 9 p.m. If you go on andysmanclub.com, you will find their webpage there, and if you put your postcode in, it will actually show you your nearest Andy's Man Club session. But for now, they're going to do a quick transition into the mental health questions. Okay, Dom. So, can you tell us, mate, what is your biggest fear?
Letting people down, um, because I always sort of I've had this, I always want to, you know, do my best with what I give, whether it's, wrestling, work, relationships. I want to be able to give my all to it. Um, but it's always been like, do I give enough? Am I enough for these people? Is what I'm doing, worthy of their attention? Like if I'm out in the ring, is, the match I'm doing worthy of people come to see it? Or, if I'm at work, is it, am I doing enough, am I doing enough hard work to warrant me still being employed there?
Okay, mate. So, obviously, when you're facing this particular fear, um, is there anybody that you talk to about it if you're experiencing something that's quite overwhelming?
Yeah, I've got like a few really, really close friends of mine that like no matter, time of day or what situation it is, I just, I've given them a quick text or give them a quick call and, if they're available, they just, listen to me, rant about whatever I need to talk about. If it's, something positive, they listen to me, even if it's really something like, crap and sort of brings the mood down. They just sit down and like listen to me, for however, if it's a 5 minute call or 30-minute call, they just listen to me ramble on about anything. Because they know that once I get it out of my head, it's a lot better for me.
Absolutely, bud. So, can you share with us a bit about when you first started experiencing your struggles with that mental health?
So it would have been about 2018, um, because I'd not long lost my brother, to mental health reasons. Um, and that just sort of really sort of sent me down into a massive spiral, that I'm still not out of. And then starting back like 2022, I'd like to say, done my first round of therapy and I've been sort of in and out of that since. And it's it was not something I realized until like years later, like how bad, like what sort of bad space I was in. Like, obviously in the moment I'm thinking, I was just, it's just sort of a phase, it'll pass. And now looking back, like, I was in like a really sort of bad place, especially last year. Like last year was like, not last year, sorry, 2023 was like the worst it's ever been for me mental health wise. Like was having like panic attacks quite regular over nothing, but I was like, was, just in work and I was just having, massive panic attacks. And yeah, it's been a few years, been quite a while since I sort of started struggling with it, and it's getting better, but it's still there in some aspect.
Okay, mate. So, would you say that the demanding nature of professional wrestling has impacted your mental health at all?
Definitely, yeah, especially on show days. My anxiety does get a lot worse because, like, it's always a worry of, am I, is it good enough? I'm always like, just like, have I earned my spot under the card? Have I basically, stolen someone else's spot who's better than me because, I was available and they weren't? Am I just sort of like, the second best I was the easy option because, I'm local, they can just, send me a quick text, but yeah, I'm there. Um, and, like I said earlier about, actually going out there and doing a match, I'm always sort of worried about, you know, doing everything I've planned, sticking to the letter of what we've sorted out for the match. So as much as I love professional wrestling, I love what I do. The mental it does not help the anxiety at all.
No, where you're coming from with that, buddy. So, you've obviously mentioned a bit of performance anxiety. Is there any
Mhm.
other specific challenges related to mental health that you faced? I'll give you a couple of other examples: pressure, travel, body imagery, and social media scrutiny. If you want to dive into the performance anxiety a bit more, you can do. But those are
Mhm.
some examples.
So I've always had body image issues. I've never truly been satisfied with, you know, how I look. Um, that's that did sort of get impacted by wrestling because obviously I'm out there in front of, load more people. I think the biggest crowd I ever done was like 400 people, and that was a lot of eyes on me. So that, you know, really didn't help the body image issues. Like, if there's a potential that many eyes on me at once, I want to look like my best physically for them, and um, so that's something I struggled with as well. Like stuff like the travel, I don't really mind because, to be honest, the travel like probably my favorite part of the shows because we're all just on the car journey, just having an absolute laugh, just dicking about with each other, and luckily I don't get any social media scrutiny right now. That really wouldn't help. It doesn't help that I don't post on the socials enough, but I'm so glad I don't have to deal with that right now because I get anxious enough putting stuff on social medias as it is. So if I was to get any sort of scrutiny on it, I'd it'd get to a point where I'd consider just like deleting all my socials account because I know like if it's a positive, criticism, that's fine. But I also know what people on like social media can be like of how, harsh they can be with what they're saying. So I'm so glad like right now I don't have to worry about any of that.
Absolutely. So, would you say that you suffer from imposter syndrome as to the reason why you have quite bad panic attacks?
A little bit, yeah. Um, so yeah, because I've never like it's been like I say 10 years since I've felt like truly happy. I'm always sort of worrying about summer, whether it's work, wrestling, personal stuff. I'm always, there's always a little thought in the back of my head, just like, you've done this wrong, or you've said the wrong thing, you've hurt this person, you've done this, done that. Um, so yeah, I think imposter syndrome might be something I need to look into more.
Absolutely, bud. So, would you say there's been a particular moment or period in your career so far where your struggles have felt particularly overwhelming?
Yeah, it's usually around this time of year, um, that it all goes sort of tits up, especially because like this time of year it's our last prize show of the year. We always want to make it epic, make it grand because we want people to remember us for being the best company in Hereford or Herefordshire. So that usually doesn't help because I'm always I want to make sure even if all my matches throughout the year have been crap, I want to put this one on as my best. I can look back on the year and be like, all right, that was the best one I've done because it's the last show. I want to make it the best. So yeah, having it this sort of time of year, it's really sort of like anxiety inducing. Like I need to make it good. I need to make it perfect.
Definitely, bud. So, what sort of coping mechanisms have you found most effective when your struggles are particularly overwhelming and you need to sort of like center yourself before you're going out?
Just distracting myself in a way. Like usually like me and some of the guys backstage, you usually end up playing cards or something, and being able to do that, or going outside and some of my mates come to my shows, so being able to go outside before my match and seeing them definitely helps because then I can sort of push the worry of my match aside and just try my best to focus on being in the moment with friends and not worrying about the show. I just focus on like all right, they're here to support me. Let's just focus on that and not worry about what I'm going to be doing later on in the night.
Absolutely, mate. So obviously, you mentioned that you sought out therapy when it came
Mhm.
to your struggles. How important was that for you to seek that professional help?
But I was basically forced into it by my parents. But it definitely like did help a lot because it just got me talking about all of it instead of just, holding all my cards close to my chest and not letting anyone in, not delving, too many secrets, only giving out what I want to give out, being able
Mhm.
to talk to a professional and, you know, not even get advice so much, just have someone there listening to my rants that in the nice way possible is paid to do it. Because as
Yeah,
much I love my family, I love my friends, I always sort of have the worry of like, am I talking too much? Am I giving them too much information? Am I sort of taking my bad headspace and putting it onto them? But being able to do it in a way where if they're a professional, they know what to do, they know what to say, definitely helped a lot more.
definitely, mate. So, what kind of support system would you say that you rely on, both within and outside of wrestling? Obviously, you mentioned your friend in wrestling and your friends outside of wrestling. Is there anyone else, particular like family members or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. My parents. You know, like even with outside wrestling struggles, like with the mental health side of all of it, I think as soon as my parents don't force anything out with me, but they're always there if if I need to get off my chest. They what I love about my parents as well is they don't always offer solutions or advice. They just let me get it off my chest. They just listen to it, let me get it out, and then it's just that. It's not, oh, you can do this instead, or oh, have you you could plan on doing this, do that. It's just sort of it's out in the open. I don't, it's out of my head. I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Definitely, mate. And would you say that that is quite a big help for when you are quite overwhelmed with your struggles?
Definitely, because as as much as I do like appreciate it when people give their advice, give their solutions, it's sort of what I found is some people it's worked for them doesn't necessarily mean it'll work for me. So, I do try and implement, some of their advice, but, then I realize, it's not what I'm supposed to be doing, just because, like, people like, they say, go and run, go on a walk. Run, I don't do running. I've tried it, not really for me. So that, but, like doing walks, that definitely helps, especially like, I love doing like a late night walk with my dog because there's no one around. I could just, stick my headphones on, play some music, and I don't have to worry about anything. Just make sure the dog stays safe, and that's it. I'm not worrying about what I look like, who's going to see me. It's just I get to be me in that situation. I don't have family worries, don't have work relationship troubles. It's just me and the dog, and that's all I need to care about.
Do you use music at all before a show at all? Is there any particular music that you like listening to?
Yeah. So I usually do like my rock and metal throughout majority of my, whenever I'm listening to music. But usually on show days, I listen to NF purely because like he talks about his mental health struggles a lot in his songs, and some of the lyrics I heavily relate to. So knowing it's going to sound very cheesy, but knowing someone else out there struggles with something similar than with what I struggle with helps, especially on show days with like the performance anxiety and stuff.
Definitely would. So, what message would you give to someone that is watching, if they might be a wrestler, might be a fan, anybody at all that's watching who's struggling with their mental health, such as yourself, sorry, and they feel as though they can't talk?
They they need to talk because holding all your worries or your depressive thoughts, whether it just be self harm or suicidal thoughts, which is something I struggle with, getting it out there, even if you don't have a solution for it, just getting it out of your head is a lot better than just lying in bed just overthinking it over and over again. Having it out of your head, like I said, no matter if you get a solution or not, getting it out of your head is a lot better than being by yourself. Because at least if someone else knows you're struggling, whether it's friend, family, or if you want to bother someone at the bus stop with it, as long as someone else knows you're struggling, it's a lot better to have one extra person instead of no extra people.
Fantastic advice, bud. So, have you found that because you have struggled with your mental health, you find it either easier to notice when someone else is, or do you find it sort of like easier to go up and say to someone, "Are you okay?" So like try and get them to talk.
I I struggle picking up on emotions anyway, but when I do pick up on it, or if someone comes up to me and tells me about what they're struggling with, I try not to offer up so much solution because, like I said earlier, just because it works for me doesn't mean it'll work for them. So I don't want to put my ideology on them, but because especially if they've done it for me, where they've sat down and listened to me, I want to be able to give that back to them. I want to give them the space to feel like they can talk to me about their struggles, even if it's some benign, as a coworker's pissed them off because they didn't stop to shower someone properly at work. Even if it's just something small as that, or if it's something major, I want I've been able to be able sorry being able to allow people to just talk to me, instead of them struggling by themselves. Or I've always had the mindset of I'd rather worry about people than people worry about me. So being able to be trusted enough for people to come up with me with their issues, I never take that for granted.
Fantastic. So you mentioned just a bit ago that about suicidal thoughts and things like that.
Hmm.
If you're okay with sharing, uh,
Yeah,
what do you think was, or do you know what was the catalyst that led to those thoughts?
I don't really know. Sort of, I was just. It was never, you know, I was never gonna go sort of out out my way to do it because I've experienced that, firsthand. I'm not gonna, put people through that again. But it was sort of like, I just wanted peace, basically. Like I had, all these thoughts going on in my head. It's like, even if it wasn't, death and, I got hit by a car and I was in a coma for a week, just being able to have, that just an empty mind, even just for like a few days, that's what I really wanted more than anything, was to get everything out of my head, have not a single worry in there, just, be able to have, silence in my head, basically.
Definitely. So when you were having these thoughts, is that when is this before or after you were kind of shoved into therapy?
Uh, this is sort of in between therapy rounds.
Hmm.
Because the group I go with for therapy, they do it on a 6 weeks group. So you do it once a week for 6 weeks, and then obviously if you need to go back, they allow you to go back. So this was sort of like in between two of the rounds I'd done, which is why I went back for the second round because I, like I said, as much as I wanted peace in my head, I didn't want to put, my family or my friends through any of that again. So I thought I needed to sort of, at least speak to a doctor about all of it, if not go back to therapy.
Definitely. So, how do you believe that professional wrestling as a whole can better support its performers' mental well-being?
Just having, places like this where, you can talk about your wrestling, but, you also, you feel safe enough to dive into the mental health side of it, just having that sort of, that space where people feel comfortable to, either talk a little or talk a whole lot about, what they're struggling with, what's going on in their life. Having that space is definitely something that would help a lot more.
Definitely, mate. So, as we start to wind down, bud, what role would you say has wrestling played in your overall mental health journey? Would you say that it's been a source of strength, a challenge, or a bit of both?
Bit of both, definitely. Like I said earlier about, it makes my anxiety worse because I'm worrying about like, am I doing good enough? But it's definitely helped my mental health because I'm getting out the house more. I'm not just, lying in bed, just, doing nothing. I'm getting out. People I can call friends now. I'm seeing them on a weekly basis. And like being able to do the actual wrestling side of it as well helps because like once I get all my gear on, it's I sort of turn it like when I've got my gear on, I turn into Dom Storm. So that
Hmm.
helps because then, once I'm in character fully, I know what I'm doing out there. I'm not worrying about it so much. So being able to basically turn into a different version of me, even if it's like, 10, 15 minutes, being that different version of me gets all my other worries on my head, like, work, relationships. I just solely focus on the wrestling.
Definitely, mate. So, when I've had guests on before, they've usually said that the character that they portray is just them turned up to 11. Would you say that that is the same for you, or would you say that when you walk into a ring and you turn into Dom Storm, that you then sort of put on a mask?
A, a bit of both, yeah.
Hmm.
Because when I'm in a safe space, and I just, I be myself, that is me in the ring, just turn it down a little bit. So, being that character, you know, is me turned up to 11. But in another way, it is me like being completely different because um it's sort of me, but a bit more angrier as well. Because, I'm beating the shit out of guys, that's that's a different side. I wouldn't, I'm not the type of person to go out and go to a pub and start a pub fight. But being able, but doing that in the ring is a different character.
Absolutely, mate. So we've got last couple of questions, but they're a bit light-hearted, just because obviously these things can get a bit upsetting for some people. What do you want
I
your
can stop
legacy
the
to be
shit.
when you retire?
Just someone that was adored, whether it's I was hated because I was a really good bad guy, or people just love my wrestler. Just you know and also like an inspiration. I want to be someone, if like we have like a 10-year-old at one of our shows and they see my character, see me wrestle, and they go like, I want to be like him. That's what I want to leave behind is people see me and, you know, I'm the reason they get into whether it be, pro wrestling or acting or, the performance thing. If I'm the, a catalyst behind that, that's something I want to leave behind.
Definitely. What are your aspirations and goals within professional wrestling for the future?
Get wrestle for more promotions, like, travel a bit more with it. As much as, I love Pride, they've given me a home, place to do my wrestling. I won't be able to get my name out there, there's so many other independent UK scenes that I want to be I want to be a part of, even if it's just, a one-off show and I don't do it again. I just want to be able to get my name out there, get my character out there more.
Absolutely, mate. Final question for you, bud. Said to you before we came on that this tends to trip the guests up quite a
Yeah.
lot. Final question for you, mate, is who's on your Mount Rushmore of wrestlers?
Dolph Ziggler, purely because of his selling work. That is something I try to emulate. Shawn Michaels, definitely, because he's just, like I said earlier, he's a childhood hero of mine. Jeff Hardy, I don't know why, but growing up, I just absolutely fell in love with his character. And then the final one, probably, yeah, The Rock, because of his promo work more than anything. Like how he was on the mic is some. I wish I was even like 1% of. Wish I could do even just a percentage of what The Rock can on the mic.
Fantastic, mate. So there you are, guys. That is the end of today's episode of the Unseen Battles. Well, thank Dom so much for joining me on today's show, mate. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely no problem, guys. So yeah, make sure you check out Dom on Instagram, guys. If you scan the QR code just above my head, that is a link to Dom's Instagram page. Alternatively, you can check him out at www.instagram.com/DomStorm Wrestling, all one word. Make sure you go give him a follow and make sure you go check him out at Prize Wrestling. Absolutely fantastic, young man. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, Dom. If you've got anything that you want to plug, mate, anything you want to get off your chest, anything you want to say, it's entirely up to you, buddy. Take it away, and then we'll end stream.
So I just want to let just if you're struggling, no matter what, talk to someone. Like I said earlier, if it's friend, family, stranger, if you had a few pints and you bothered a local old man in your Weatherspoons, just talk to him. And also this Saturday, the 29th of November, we've got the final prize show of the year at the Richmond Club in Hereford at 6 p.m. Tickets are only £8. It's a fun family day out.
Fantastic. There you are, guys. Make sure you check out Don Storm. And guys, always remember, it's okay to talk. Let's get mental health and a key issue within wrestling. We'll see you guys later.